Okay, good evening. My name is Sebastián Belagamba. I'm the Regional Bureau Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Internet Society. I would like to welcome you all to my hometown, where I was born, actually. I'm here in Buenos Aires. As you may know, our Regional Bureau is located in Montevideo, Uruguay, where I reside. But I personally was born here, so I'd like to welcome. The past 30 minutes were meant for you to introduce to each other and to network, so we are not going to go through this typical round of presentations and introductions today because it takes so much time out of the agenda. So we consider that you're being introduced to each other. I would like first to invite Olga Cavalli here as a representative of the local, the Argentina chapter, to introduce herself and to give us some words, welcoming words from the Argentina chapter, please.
Thank you so much. Does everyone understand English, or should I make Spanish-English now? I've been making so frequently these days, so I'm accustomed to it. Thank you very much for the invitation, and welcome to our nice city of Buenos Aires and to our country. And thanks for the ISOC community to be with us today. It's an honor to be the chapter of ISOC in this country. We are a chapter that has kind of a long story. We started I was asking Sebastián to refresh my memory because I was not member through all the history of the chapter. Sebastián and other pioneers of ISOC, of Internet started, which is true. I want to really remark that. He's blushing, yeah. They started in 1999, the chapter, and then, of course, as you know, the associations go through different stages, and I joined the chapter in 2006. There's a video. Were you in the opening ceremony? There was a video presented there, and there is a small statement that they show from me, but the statement is longer. And the 2006 in Sao Paulo was my first meeting, and I say something specifically about the experience in that meeting in the longer video, and I tell about all the nice people I met there and all the warmth of friends I received during that meeting. And I do a special reference to Sebastián because he cheered me all the meeting, along the whole meeting, really. And also Tony, and also Hartmut, and this where I met Lynn. We had a nice chat over lunch in that meeting, and in that meeting I learned a lot about ICANN and a lot about ISOC, and I decided to get more involved in this community, which has a lot in common in between ISOC and ICANN. So first, I would like to thank Lynn for all her leadership through all these years, and for her friendship to all of us, for being with us all over the world. Wherever we go, she's always for the ISOC chapters and ISOC members working and leading us, and I want to say that you will be very missed. And I've been following you. You have been kind of a leadership figure for me. So I would like to thank her. Honestly, I always thought that you were a nice example of women professional. And, you know, I lead several activities related with professionals and women and engineers, and you also have a technical background. We talked about that at that time, I remember. So you're an inspiration for women, and you're an inspiration for the ISOC and ICANN community and for the Internet community. So you will be missed. I hope you are not going so far away, that you keep around. I'm sure you will keep around us, and you will guide us somehow. So thank you very much for your leadership and your company. So that meeting was very important for me in 2006, and all those friends told me that this was difficult. You always have something new to learn. Oh, Ariel, I didn't see you. That's so nice to have you here. Ariel, he's our vice president from our chapter. I am the secretary. Is Monica here? Okay. our president, I think she's flying to somewhere in Latin America. She's very busy. Monica Avalos, she's our president. So I've learned so much. And what I have learned is that you have to learn every day a new thing. And you are all of us lead ourselves in this learning process, which is complex and at the same time is very interesting. Just a brief note, and I'm sure that Ariel will help me about our chapter. We are, how many years we have? You said, you were mentioned especially in Geneva for the 2012 event. How many years we have? 15 years old. So we are kind of an old chapter related with internet life. And we have done several interesting projects. I want to say especially that our chapter is incorporated into the Argentine law as an association. And now we are going through a legal analysis because the local regulations are much more strict to local associations. I'm not a lawyer, he knows about it. So we are going through that process and we hope to finish it by the first months of 2014. But we have some projects ongoing. Now we have the second version of the book IPv6 for All that was very successful in when we did it in 2008. We presented it in the INET meeting in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and has been translated into several languages and has been copied and downloaded thousands of times. So we are just almost finishing the new version, updated version. We also are renewing our website that we have created with the chapter and also with the help of the ILAC Internet Governance Working Group of the Information Society Regional Plan. It's called mapainternet.info. It will be relaunched very soon. And we also have worked in several training activities in the South School of Internet Governance. Next one will be held in Trinidad and Tobago in April. And in a conference called Dominios Latin America that was organized this year in Colombia, the chapter was present. And also, what else? Remind me of accessibility conference, and we have been present in Bali in several workshops in the IGF, and what I'm missing, Ariel, tell me. Accessibility, yeah, the conference about accessibility, we organize it every year. Jorge Plano, he's an expert, a recognized expert in accessibility at an international level. So we are a chapter, we are active, we have our back and forth like every organization, but we hope to restart with a new structure related online with all the regulations in Argentina. The fact that we have a structure is important. It's extremely complex, and also it takes a lot of time to have it online and to have it right and to have it and to pay for all the accountants and lawyers. But yeah, sure. But that is related with the transparency and the rotation of the authorities of the chapter. So we think it's very important. Ariel.
Only one thing that maybe can be useful for several countries is the experience that we did with the paperwork and all the legal issues that face when you decide, as our chapter decided, to have a legal a non-for-profit organization that sometimes for the chapter is very heavy to keep all the books, all the taxes, and all the regulations that you should follow to have the legal part of your organization according to the national laws. It is important because sometimes when the authorities of the chapter change, they should oversee all the books that have each organization to be sure that everything is in order. Because later, if you leave the time pass, you should face that the organization is very difficult. For this reason, our recommendation and our experience is to put effort in this aspect of the organization to have all your paper in order. We are very happy that we reached the point that we are in order because Argentina is very demanding in the legal aspect. This is something, maybe because I am a lawyer, I put a lot of stress in this issue. Thank you.
And we have put a lot of time as well. But we are very happy that that is almost done. And I just want to thank all of you, especially Lynn, for all your commitment and your guidance through all these years. Honestly, you are our leader. And I also, we have also organized some conferences in the National Center of Engineers. I'm a board member there. We did a conference about cloud computing and engineering and about women in engineering, and I lead a commission there about the women in engineering career. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being in our nice city of Buenos Aires. Enjoy it. Today the weather is not so nice. We tried to arrange it for all the week, but it didn't work. But it's fresh, so you can walk more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you very much, Ariel. We are going to move forward, and this is a milestone for the society that I would like to announce. Yesterday, we announced the creation of a new chapter. It's just from here, from the region. It's our chapter in Paraguay. But happens to be the 100th chapter of the Internet Society. Nicolás Caballero here is the president, the new president of the new chapter. So I would like to ask Nicolás for some words.
Thank you very much. We're very happy to have the chapter finally recognized, so to say. And I would like to give a big thank you to Joyce, who is around here or no? Okay, thank you so much, Joyce. A big thank you to Constantinos, who happens to be right in front of me, right here, and Raquel Gato, thank you so much. Also to my Paraguayan lawyers to my left, Natalia Enciso and Mari Carmen Sequeira, all those, all the paperwork and everything else. So, well, basically just to say that we're very happy and that we'll do our best to keep up the spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ted Mooney is there, and I would like, please come here. He's got some words to share with us.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. I just wanted to let everybody know that earlier today, a stalwart of the Internet Society for a long period of time, and a staff member who joined just when I joined in June of 2011, announced that he's going to be moving on to the next stage of his career and his life. So I would like to personally thank Jacek Gajewski for all the work that he's done, for the perspective that he has given me personally and to many of our staff about the great work that chapters do, about the way that they think and operate, and to wish him Godspeed from all of us at the Internet Society on to this next stage, and to say that we hope that you will continue to be in contact and to inform our perspective as we go forward. Jacek, thank you so very much. We're sorry to see you go.
It was great, 11 or 18 years with ISOC already. And I can assure you I will be as long as I can. So I'm not leaving you. I will be with you all the time and with all my heart and possibilities. So thank you very much for these very, very nice words. That is really encouraging for me. Thank you. Have a good...
Good evening. My name is Alejandro Pisanti. I will be so presumptuous as to think I can speak with other members, other chapter members, and individual members' thoughts about Jacek. Jacek is one of the very few people who meant Internet Society to me 15 or 18 years ago. They were out in the wild, in difficult countries, doing amazing work against all odds, and just doing it. They had rolled up their sleeves and they had blazed a path that we were challenged to follow and to spread the word. It was in the INET, it was in the very elementary chapter list, it was in the Internet Societal Task Force kind of efforts, where we learned to see these guys and to measure ourselves to their example.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. There is some of our Board of Trustees here in the room, so I would like to ask you guys if you could stand up in order for people to recognize you. No, you sit down. No. Yeah. And Raul? Raul? Yeah. Up, yeah. Thank you, guys. And with respect to this, there is a parochial announcement. The nominations for the Board of Trustees is open today, the period. So I would like to ask Rudy if you could, as a NOMCOM member, if you could brief us on the process, so maybe some of the people in the room or online would like to apply for that position.
Thank you, Sebastian. Well, I'm pleased to be on the board and have been elected by you. It takes a while before I took the decision. And in fact, it's the guy aside me. There's a special reason why I'm sitting aside him. He called on me and said, Rudy, we need you upwards. And I said, well, let's have a look.
We need you to compete.
To compete, exactly. And it took me a while before I decided to take that on. So I would say don't take as long as I took. Just stand up. We need you in the board. We need your voices from the chapters world. The nominations are open. You have probably seen the message on the mailing list, also on the website. And I would like you to start nominating those you know that could be good trustees too. I can tell you it's an amazing job. When I first started having my first readings of minutes of the meetings, it was a book I was reading. It was amazing. I'm in ISOC 4 since 94, so almost next year 20 years. And I discovered a new ISOC. When you're living in your chapter, you're doing your regional work. But once you're going a level higher, you discover another world, and an amazing world. It will take a lot of your time. That's something you don't have to forget. But please, if you know somebody that could join the team of the trustees, we are not that big team, we are just a soccer team, and 2 or 3 reserves. But we are playing an interesting game. And we never lose. We can only win. And I think that Dave can confirm that Dave was on the board in the very, very early ages. Alejandro was also on the board in a previous life, if I may say. So please, stand up if you know somebody. Nominate a person or nominate yourself. And I would really welcome you in the nomination list. And we will go through some interviews with you to see if you will confirm the expectations we also have. But please, don't wait. If you find somebody you can count on and say, that person will really be able to join the team, do it. I'm waiting for you.
Thank you very much, Rudy. When I asked the trustees to stand up, I forgot that Bert is online, so he could not stand up. Yeah. So probably he did, but we couldn't see him. So thank you, Rudy. Bert is online. And I would also like to recognize the presence here of Martin as chairman of the board of the PIR. So would you please stand up too? Oh, okay, no. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. And a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Siva Subramanian from ISOC India, Chennai. And more than the trustee elections, I'm concerned about a more important role, the role of the next CEO. My question is not to ask who the next CEO is going to be, but I want to know if good people are in charge of the process, not the last of the names percolated down by the external agency, but of all the names that are nominated, and if the process is going well. And I would particularly like to ask Lynn if she would make sure that we'll have another CEO as good as you are. Thank you.
I mean, you're all too kind, but we do have a couple of representatives from the search committee here. Dave, if you can give a quick update.
That one? Okay. Yeah, the way we organized the search basically was that every member of the board who was not in the process of wanting the job was put on the search committee. And there were 3 of us who co-chaired the search committee. Teresa, myself, and
It was Bob Hinden initially, and
well,
then
Keith. That's right, because Bob was made chairman. And we've been working, I would say we've been working a huge amount. We met on the telephone every week. We went through an extensive list of possible candidates, over 35, if I remember correctly, whittled them down. We invited 7 of the best, and they were excellent people, to a meeting in Frankfurt where we interviewed them, and then we chiseled those down to basically 2 who we think are certainly up to the job. And they will be interviewed during our board meeting, or after the board meeting on Sunday, by the entire search committee, and we will try to make a decision. I feel very comfortable that the people who have ended up are very, very, very good. I'd be happy to see them run an organization that I had money in.
Thank you very much, David, for the briefing. Okay. With that, we are going to go into the agenda. The agenda has 2 main points that have been decided in our chapter delegates list by us. And are 2 subjects that are close to each other, which are the overview about Internet governance 2014 processes and an update on the global multi-stakeholder conference on the future of the Internet governance that is going to be held in Sao Paulo in 2014 too. So I would like to ask first Marcus to make the first introduction in these subjects. Then Lynn will follow, and we will open the floor for questions and answers after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. It's not a nice city of Buenos Aires, it's a beautiful city of Buenos Aires. Thank you, Olga, for your hospitality. Yes, we're going to have a very busy year ahead of us. There are major conferences that have been planned for many years to come. and the discussions in the past months have intensified. We saw almost a year ago in the Dubai conference, known by its acronym as WICID, that there are difficult times, but there was nothing new on that. I mean, we have gone through that, and there are many veterans of past battles, so to speak, around this table. There have always been an attempt by governments to take more responsibility, to find a role in the internet governance landscape. The internet is organized in a different way, and for governments it's difficult to find their place. So the role of governments in internet governance arrangement is an important one, and we have to work towards finding a suitable place for all the actors involved. So after WICID, we clearly realized going into next year, we have to make an effort to address some of the issues that have come up there. There may be perceived issues, they may not be real issues. Spam was one of the issues that was mentioned very high on the agenda. We, as Internet Society, we have made an effort to address spam, have organized workshops to show that there are solutions on the way. One workshop was in Africa, one workshop in Latin America, in Argentina, and we have taken this to the Internet Governance Forum to show there are solutions there. It's not that nothing has been done, but sometimes some governments did not know about all the efforts that have been made by a specialized group. That was one aspect. We knew there would be more to come, but what hit us that was not expected were the revelations about massive surveillance almost half a year back, and that really has caused what we called a tectonic shift in the political discussion on internet governance. It's a question to a large extent to the benign stewardship of one country, the United States, where many questions were asked: can we actually trust this stewardship? And the question of trust came up in many of these discussions. So that's where we are now, and we face next year 3 major international conferences. There is WSIS plus 10, that's taking stock of the 10 years since WSIS. There is the World Telecom Development Conference, WTDC, which is a conference I think we can go into with a very positive spirit, because the ITU can do a lot of good helping developing countries accessing the internet, but at the same time we have to be mindful. There may also be many traps there that governments try to introduce solutions which we would consider as not necessarily beneficial to the internet. And then, of course, there is the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, which will take place in October, November in Korea. And the Plenipotentiary Conference is a treaty conference that decides on how the ITU will go forward for the next 4 years. It can give binding mandates to the ITU, and there has been a push since back in Minneapolis in '98 for the ITU to get a bigger role in internet governance. So we don't have to go back into the history, but there is a trajectory that is not really that new, but now with the surveillance issue squarely on the table, it acquires a different weight, I think, in the discussions, and we have to be mindful. So we are preparing for all these conferences in the usual way by analyzing all the input. We work very strongly with the regional bureaus. Sebastian is one of them. He's very active in the LAC region, but we have regional bureaus in all of the regions, and all the preparatory work usually gets done in the regions. And of course, we also rely on chapters, and last year's exercise, how we prepared WICID, was an excellent example of how we really can have an impact by working closely with chapters on the ground who we see as the trusted advisors of their respective governments. Now, we do understand there's no one-size-fits-all model for this, but I think we come to that in the latter part of the discussion. But chapters had a tremendous impact also on national positions, and we try to build on that as we go in these conferences. And basically, I don't want to speak much longer because I think Lynn has kindly agreed to be with us, and she was very central in all the developments of the past weeks, which started with Montevideo. And with that, I would like to pass over to you, Lynn, please.
Thank you. And thank you again to everybody for giving up a lovely night in Buenos Aires. We're competing against a lot of other events here as well. I think there's an ALAC event down the hall where I think roughly 75 or 80% of the ALAC structures are actually Internet Society chapters. So it's always a struggle between which sort of, and Olivier just came in as well, but we're always appreciative of people who make time in the middle of busy weeks to come and spend this evening with us. The Montevideo statement, I think you've all seen this statement. I'll just talk a little bit about how the ISTAR event came about, because that's most of the questions I've actually had over the course of the week. So the ISTAR meeting consists of the CEOs of 11 of the Internet organizations that have a significant responsibility for developing or managing key pieces of the Internet's infrastructure. So it's the 5 regional Internet registries, the IETF and the IAB chair, who are actually here this week and may be joining us, although I don't think they've come yet. The W3C, ICANN, ISOC, and the IANA function as well. And we started that meeting 3 years ago, 2 meetings a year, 2 days apiece, and it was about just building relationships and kind of sharing strategic visions, direction, and looking for points of alignment. The meetings were not secret at all, but neither did we actually publicize them. We didn't publicize them because we didn't want them to become a standing venue or a standing event, because frankly, as a group of people, we had no standing of that in the community. It's our individual communities and our individual organizations that have responsibilities. So we came together as a group to help coordinate some of that, to help facilitate some of that collaboration, not again as a standing venue. Obviously, because it wasn't secret, things do get known, and we decided to be a little more public about the meetings and the event, and specifically at the meeting earlier this year in Singapore, the other ISTAR leaders agreed that it should be convened and chaired by the Internet Society, which is in fact the way it had always been, but it was more by a gentleman or gentlewoman's agreement. This is actually the Internet Society working with the other ISTAR CEOs to set the agenda and formally convene and chair the meetings. And so this is the Internet Society community. I think it's just important that everybody actually understands that. We issued a statement coming out of Montevideo, and I have to say it was Raul Echeverria's initiative. Based on the discussions we were having, where obviously we were upset over the surveillance and thought it was important that we actually go on record as being both against surveillance and also issuing some cautions against some of the reactions we were already seeing, because that would hurt the global internet. And at the same time, we sort of always include IPv6 and IANA and ICANN when we make statements like that. There is nothing new in those particular bullets. We wanted to do it immediately after the conference, which is also why there was no broader consultation. It's clear that we did surprise some other parts of the community, mainly I think some of the CCs in the private sector, who don't disagree with anything that's up there, but wondered why all of a sudden there was a statement coming out. But again, it was more a matter of wanting to reflect the concern over surveillance and some of the resulting actions, and to go on record formally with that. So we can go to the next slide. Since the Montevideo, there have been a number of developments. And within the I-STARS, we actually talk about them in the context of sort of 5 tracks. I've got one high-level slide on each one of these tracks, and I'm sharing them because I've had questions over the course of the week on what they mean. A lot of them are still under development. In fact, the first one there, the Brazil meeting, there's an hour-and-a-half open public session tomorrow morning at the lovely hour of 7 a.m., 7 a.m. to 8:30, where some, I guess, additional discussion, I'm not sure additional details per se, will be shared. That is a different structure and different process for determining that. But these are the 5 things which we're actually sort of most actively engaged in at the moment, post the Montevideo meeting, but not directly out of the Montevideo meeting. So if we just go to the next slide quickly. We've all heard about that. I think the new part is that at this point in time, they're looking at 4 committees that will help convene and organize. What has been announced so far is the date, the location, and the title, and it will be coordinated by CGI.BR. And there's a series of discussions underway today with respect to both the agenda, the purpose, who's participating, an awful lot of both program discussions and logistic discussions that I don't think we're prepared to talk about here because, again, it's not the right forum. And there is a meeting tomorrow, which is more about, I think, some of the leaders understanding what the ICANN community actually feels about the Brazil meeting. It was a meeting that wasn't planned in the international meeting agenda. That's obviously putting a burden on some people to step up to another meeting. And there were also questions as to how this actually fit with the IGF and other similar activities. So that'll be discussed tomorrow morning. If we go to the next slide, OneNet is in a sort of similar situation. It's positioned as a global dialogue on the future of internet governance. Its purpose and role is still evolving. There is a placeholder site that's been launched. There's a more permanent site under development. If you're on the list, you've seen that there have been some concerns about the current placeholder. To me, what's more important is that I think certainly amongst the broader internet community, and the I-STARS are only a subset of that, we need to all get clear on what we want OneNet to be. And I think there's actually still a question on whether or not it is to be, but I think we need to let some of these discussions roll through the various communities again. Next slide. There was also a high-level panel that was announced. It has a very specific remit. It will expire no later than March 1st, possibly earlier than that, when its work is done. And its purpose is to prepare a high-level report, which would include some principles for global internet cooperation and some proposed frameworks or for cooperation, or perhaps some roadmap or some strengthening mechanisms. And so that was just announced 2 or 3 days ago, Monday, I think. Mitchell Baker from Mozilla, Finsurf, Fadi, Olaf Kolkman, and myself, amongst others, are on that panel. No, it's fine. Certainly enough said on that. IANA globalization. This is actually, so our position is the same as it's always been. And in fact, it's documented pretty fully as far back as 2006 in some contributions we made. They were updated several times since, including in 2011. But basically, we support the continued evolution to a private sector-led model as originally foreseen. And obviously, that means that all parts of the community need to be ready to stand up and assume that level of responsibility. A lot of that work, the architectural work, is led by the Internet Architecture Board, the IAB. And there's a link up there which actually points to an infographic on this shared info internet resource. And there is an internet draft out from the IAB as well that talks about what those 3 functions are and, by and large, how they're actually performed today. So a lot of the ground is being prepared with respect to, I think, informing people on how all this IANA function actually works, where the appropriate points of responsibility are, but it's trying to simply document in a way that the broader community can actually agree those functions and roles. And I don't think anybody's come in here in the background. I was looking to see if Olaf Kolkman or Russ had come in the meantime. That work is, it's largely driven through appropriate forums such as ICANN. There's some specific work that's happening in the IETF and other forums, and it's just continuing, in my mind, its kind of eventual march. The next slide is ICANN globalization. And again, this is all in the context of what the ISTAR work is, and frankly, a lot of the meetings that are in the background here are dealing with those 5 tracks. We put the ICANN globalization in just for completeness. It is clear that it is, in fact, the work of the ICANN community. They are reporting out very regularly on that, including a couple of reports here at this particular meeting. And our only point there is that many of the Internet organizations work collaboratively across the ecosystem, and of course that's particularly true in the regions. And ICANN is stepping up a very significant presence in all of the regions, and that presents some good opportunities for partnership. Next slide. So this is, Marcus mentioned this in his earlier comments. One of the things we kept hearing through some of the Internet governance is that there are problems. They were called orphan issues or Internet governance gaps, which I have to say a number of people have concerns or issues with that terminology. And particularly with some of the examples are cited, such as spam and cybersecurity. A lot of those issues are actually being addressed or have been addressed, maybe aren't known everywhere, but they're not ones that are not, it's not because nobody is paying attention or is aware that there's actually an issue. And we actually just thought it wasn't framing the discussion well enough to just say it's a problem, it's an orphan issue, it's falling through the gap, we need to look at new structures and mechanisms perhaps. So we put together what was initially called a taxonomy. It's now called a collaborative stewardship framework. And it's not meant to categorize every issue. We may get close to it at some point, but it really was to try and identify the different types of issues, so a classification, if you will, of issues. Because depending on what type of issue it is, what you're trying to solve for is differently, and therefore your solution paths are different. That leads you to different roles and different roles by stakeholders. And one can imagine that in one classification, a government might have a role of X, and in a different classification, they'd have a role of Y. Same thing for private sector, civil society, et cetera. We're really trying to inform those discussions so that people think about the problems. Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity can be everything from what we're all doing on our laptops, or more often than not doing, to cyber warfare on the other end. So it's a vast range, and if we want to both advance those issues and inform the discussion, then we need to disaggregate some of them, and we need to be able to talk about them in a way that starts to get to some of the roles, specifically of stakeholders. So that's a piece of work that out of the ISTARS, ISOC took the leadership for, and we're trying to move forward with it quite quickly. We just released today a new draft which has some of the roles and stakeholders populated. And frankly, it's a high-level population for one of the classifications. We're really looking for people to help us test and prove that framework and then help us think through the roles and ultimately the stakeholders. We put it out in Bali, we put it out at the IETF, we're putting out here, we're getting lots of good feedback. A lot of people say it's extremely helpful. It would be nice to actually get it to a more complete point so that people really are again, disaggregating the issues, being thoughtful about what it is we're trying to solve for and therefore the roles. We start by believing that if we actually understand that and understand what our endpoint is with respect for a vision of Internet development, that we can then determine where the Internet ecosystem or the Internet governance models need to evolve and potentially to what? We're in a continual evolution, so it's no secret that they will continue to evolve, and some will need strengthening and possibly reshaping. We actually want to try and inform that, if we will, with some kind of consistent frameworks, building on what we learned through WSIS and the Tunis agenda, which gave us some very useful definitions of Internet governance. It gave us a lot of frameworks and principles such as non-duplicative roles, and those things are very, very useful in conversations with governments, private sector, technical, civil society, academia. So we're trying to do the same thing here in that space. I think that might be the last of my slides. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything, Marcus, that you want to come back and bridge with here, or we had said we would put the slide back up. If you go one more, I think there's a slide of the timetable again, because it's clear that what we're all trying to do is work towards a longer set of discussions and a longer timeline and a bigger set of discussions on internet governance than what we might see here swirling around the corridors, which frankly are pretty focused on the Brazil meeting, the OneNet, a little bit less, significantly less, and frankly on the high-level panel. But those are only two activities. You know, we really need to address and work towards the longer term and a more sustainable set of internet governance discussions across the globe and across many stakeholders. So I think that's a conversation we're looking to have next, which is of course on the basis of the agenda items you all submitted. But I'm not sure if I'm turning it back to Sebastian or to Marcus.
Well, if I may just add a few words, thank you very much. And clearly the list shows there are really many challenges ahead in terms of conferences and meetings. And the Brazil meeting is very much up in the forefront of our current discussions, but it will not detract us from doing our regular work. And that is basically going into all these meetings with all the effort that is required to have an impact there. And there are other events as well. I mean, we had just a few days ago, we released a statement on the TPP, which is a regional but an important negotiations which has the potential of having a negative impact on the internet. And there we very much look forward, and we had this discussion looking to even there, you know, we also can improve our act, and we are grateful for having your input, and there are things we can do better. One of the things is maybe, yes, we should have sent out the statement before to our chapters to give them a heads up so they are aware it's coming out, they can alert their local media and so on. So I'm not going to start this discussion. We're going to have, I think that'll be led by Walter and Ted on how to collaborate, but we are willing to engage and we are also willing to listen. And but it is really extremely important that we work together as ISOC family. We listen to each other, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but chapters can have a tremendous impact. And Alejandro posted to the list, recalled the very important function the Mexican chapter played in the fight against ACTA, convincing the Senate not to approve the agreement. So there are many really good success stories, and going forward, I think this will be increasingly important. What we are trying to, this is one of the, actually, there are a few words we don't like in these discussions. One of them is status quo. We don't want to be seen as the conservative guys who try to preserve antiquated model. No, it's a dynamic model, and we discussed this internally, and we liked the term. Okay, we have to emphasize maybe a little bit more that the internet governance trajectory is a dynamic evolution of collaborative arrangements between various institutions, but it's not static. It's not a status quo in the classical sense. And there, I think we really have to work on the narrative of how we present ourselves. The last thing we want to be seen is the conservative guys who try to defend some antiquated model. And here is now the new idea to come in with the governments and basically impose a 19th century model on the internet that is seen as progress. So with that, I hand back to Sebastian.
Thank you very much. And I think Marcus just summarized it in the right way. What's the spirit of this discussion? I mean, it's about a discussion. I will now open the floor for comments, questions, and etc. And okay, I have Alejandro first, but just 1 second, just. Yeah, sure.
A quick correction. I just refer to chapters, but we also have org members here, and it's an evening for chapters and org members for all the ISOC families, and they are all playing an equally important role.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will just, Alejandro, if you allow me just 1 second, just for tell the, all the colleagues that are connected remotely that they can post their questions online in the chat box of the WebEx that they're using. So please, Alejandro.
Thank you, Sebastian. I think that, well, it has been extraordinary for me to be able to come over to this meeting because it complemented some conversations I had online. Some people of key centralizing or coordinating positions have been generous in talking to me. And I think that there's a fair summary here that for many of us, the whole reaction to the Snowden, PRISM, etc. revelations, trying to drive this into the field of internet governance has been excessive, misguided, deliberately, in many ways misguided. What the complaint really is in layer 11 or somewhere up there, and it should be called snooping governance that has to be fixed. And once governments agree on some form of snooping governance, of governing the intervention in communications, then the internet community could say, okay, let's see how we live with it. And I think the IETF reaction, for example, has been a very proper example of that, saying, you know, okay, we will agree, or mostly agree, that pervasive passive monitoring of networks is an attack. By the way, there's no uniform agreement there either. But let's see what we can do technically in those layers. I think that the way to proceed for us will certainly be not to undermine ICANN in FADI's effort pushing forward. That we would all lose if we let that happen. But also make sure that things are shaped in as much as possible by all forms of influence the way we think is important. The way we think is important up to now has been never to provide a single target, but provide multiple loosely coordinated targets in the best of cases, moving targets. The thing that we should push for is not to have one single of the following. Not a single country with a role. We are trying to evolve away from the single role or the asymmetric role of the US in the IANA function. That will take a lot of time, and there are many people, reasonable people in our community who don't want that to move too fast unless you know where it's going. Because if it's going back to some other countries or set of countries, it will be even worse. No single point of failure, no single coordination entity, for example, which now becomes a target. My naval war analogy is taking a lot of torpedo boats, which are, some of them were built in 1945, they're oldish and not very efficient, and they don't have good rockets, but they're very mobile. Melting all that steel to build a single aircraft carrier, which is a huge target, which cannot move, and which is telling Brazil or some other country, we are the aircraft carrier, you should move away, and the other guys are the lighthouse. So they won't go away. No single definition of internet governance. We should push against the idea that the Brazil meeting or anything else will produce a definition of internet governance which is good for everybody every time and for many years. We have different definitions of internet governance depending on countries, regions, interests, religions, and so forth, and we should strive for them to stay diverse. Avoid a single set of principles for internet governance, which is another thing that's has been in the objectives of things like the Brazil meeting. To cut this short in this line, during the IGF, and it's only 8 years of IGF, there are about already 24 or so examples of sets of internet governance rights and principles or principles. They are not all compatible. Some privilege freedom of speech, and that is very contrary to countries which would rather privilege peaceful coexistence within society, and many other issues. Others come up with, I mean, the most established one, the IRP, comes up first with the right to life. And you can imagine preaching right to life as an internet governance principle in Iowa, US, as not exactly a successful strategy. No single list of issues for governance. There's people who cut it one way, there's people who cut it another way, there's people who put spam and phishing together, there's people who put phishing and cybersecurity together. Let that happen. Let these 1,000 flowers of definitions bloom. And in particular, we should not buy two phrases together, three phrases. One already Marcus went to it, which is the status quo. We are the revolution. It's not a loud, explosive revolution, but we are the revolution. The other forces are the counter-revolution. They are pushing back. But also, we should not accept the terms like governance gap. That's an invention that has been very popular in the ITU at times. It scares governments white, and they immediately go to somewhere that doesn't look like a gap. But we should not accept that term. We should not use it in our vocabulary. And orphan issues. It may be argued that there are a few orphan issues in internet governance. Most of the time, if something is an issue, there's already someone, some organization, some couple of engineers, an engineer and a lawyer trying to work on it. And what can happen is that they may be of not enough scale, not enough expertise. They may need to grow globally or to spring up multiple times regionally. But there are very, very few real orphan issues in global internet governance. Many of the things that appear as orphan issues are actually not internet governance issues, but legal issues. Your judges are not well trained to identify cybercrime as a form of crime and fraud, and or you don't have that law, but it's a national law, not a global law. And finally, we should make sure that we stay away from single points of extortion, that we identify any forces that can exert extortion on the ISTAR system, on ICANN, on ISOC, on the ATF, and so forth, by saying I can make your life miserable if you don't make me happy. Like, if I have a meeting in my country and become popular and I can win an election, so now you cannot make me lose because I will be very unhappy and I will charge it to your account. So rather, already have another country lined up for the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, and I really love your capacity to read my mind, because
no, these things are in everybody's mind.
Yeah, I was supposed to introduce 3 questions that we produce as ISOC staff in order to help us in this discussion, and you address all 3 of them already. So just the 3 of these questions that we produce are in the screen now. How do we engage or re-engage governments at all levels in internet governance issues and multi-stakeholder processes? That is one issue that is important to us that we want to highlight. What other local, regional, international stakeholders can we engage in internet governance processes, and how do we do it? And how can we work together to develop and share timely information and insights at the local, regional, and global levels to advance our internet governance agenda? So those are 3 guides that we wanted to produce. Please, Barak, right? Yeah, thank you. After that, sorry.
Thank you, Sebastian. Barak Otieno from Internet Society Kenya chapter. I just want to highlight on something. I think we are in interesting times, but what's important is our core mission, which is the internet for all. Because at the end of the day, so much is happening, but we should remember that our goal is to ensure that the internet is available, especially for the communities that have not been able to take advantage of the internet so far. And I think whatever we do, we need to strive for ideals, be they partnerships, be they collaborations, that will ensure that those who have not accessed the internet, be they the next billion or how many, are able to access the internet going into the future. And I think some of the areas that we need to look at as we go into the new year is to build our capacity to engage, especially at local level. We need to be more offensive. This is a word I learned yesterday, as opposed to being defensive, because there's a tendency to be able to react right now to keep our rightful place as chapters, but we need to look at what exactly is on the tray that will enable us to advance our ideals as the internet society going forward. So my proposal, because the chapters are crucial on the ground, and I'll give an example of East Africa. Right now, the internet governance process is being run by ISOC Kenya, ISOC Uganda, ISOC Rwanda, and ISOC Burundi. These are the national levels. And together as ISOC chapters, we are also running the East African Internet Governance Forum, which was supposed to be run by the governments. But we realized that for some reason they are not taking their rightful place. But we are not saying that we are going to push them out. We are still looking forward to giving them their rightful place as the leaders of the people, the government. But I feel strongly that there is need for us to build our capacity on engaging with like-minded people who are able to enable us to achieve our overall mission as the Internet Society. Thank you.
Thank you, Barak. Stefano, please.
Since ISOC Italy, and also representing the government of Italy in the GAC. And so the first of the question is how to engage governments. So that is quite key in this evolution and this fast evolution in the discussions concerning internet governance. So I mentioned a meeting we had with the GAC and the board, and Fadi, in order to not to scare the governments present, said about Montevideo statement, be quiet, it is not nothing new. So I intervened and said, maybe you are right, because if you listen at the discussions in the community on internet governance, you may find, for example, things regarding internationalize the IANA contract. But what is important in this Montevideo statement is that this statement was done by the I-Star, the so-called I-Stars. So, and this is something very important, and also someone made the question, but Fadi signing this and considering that ICANN has a contract with the Department of Commerce for running the IANA service, then he risks something because or he got some admission and say, okay, go ahead, you can say that. So, but this is very important because in this way, the interpreter of the strict definition of the governance, having in the hand an organization like ICANN that is a successful organization, may also provide the idea that this model can be extended to the orphan issues as you define them, spam or security or whatever it is. And so, and the idea of the meeting in Brazil is in the same direction. So, is born from the same framework. And so someone asks, what about the IGFs? Is this something in alternative or what? So I think that we have to try to navigate both models also because IGF will come to an end and then will have to be redesigned just if we'll continue after WSIS plus 10 in 2 years from now. So these are very, very interesting movements, and then we have to be able to follow them, to involve the people inside the countries, and so the chapters may have a good role in order to understand this movement and to find ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I would just say some words that I come to my mind about your intervention, but I am a little bit worried about the concept of orphan issues, orphan topics, because I think you put two examples for spam and security, and And I wouldn't say that there is nothing being done about those, if those issues are orphaned. So it's a longer discussion, and I don't want to debate with you. I mean, it's just something that popped to my mind when you mentioned that. Mohammed, please.
Thank you very much. Mohammed Al-Bashir, I'm founder of Qatar Internet Society. And on my day job, I'm a director of technology at the government regulator. So just like to share some of the experience. I was part of the country delegation to WICID. I think at the local level it's important that the chapter also be proactive and involved with the government. And also try to bring ISOC principles onto the table, as this is what an important think tank is put forward. For example, when we shaping our position before going to WICID, ISOC statements and principles were very solid documents we relied on really to steer the direction of our position. So people at the management level or high management level were aware about the issues at the early stages, and they were able to articulate a different position. I think in WICID, Qatar was considered to be one of the open-minded or light-minded delegations. So I think other countries as well. Kenya was an example as well. So the chapters need to try to influence that the local government by presenting ISOC as a think tank, as an organization that could add value to them. So I think that's important. At the regional level, usually positions are formed regionally first, and then some countries are already, let's say, known for having specific positions regarding internet governance and how things are done. I think it's important that ISOC to be either presence or those regional forums. That could be, for example, the African Union, Commission, even as an observer, just following up the process, because that's important, because that's where you can trigger issues, and you know that there's issues going to be, there's proposals coming on the table. For example, in the Arab world, there's Arab League, and well known, some countries, their positions is known. So being proactive and being there, I think is very important, because otherwise we'll be just seen as reactive to the proposals after it's put on the table. So if we try to be proactive at earlier stages, that would be very important. So I think, and we shouldn't be seen as defensive. I think that's important. We should be seen as leading things that are already proactive, because when things get decided, unfortunately, we don't. Governments are the ones who have the voting cards on that, on the conferences, unfortunately. So that's what's happened on WICID.
Thank you very much. I would give the floor to the gentleman over there. I'm sorry, I don't recall your name, so I apologize.
Okay. I'm Philip Johnson from ISOC Liberia, all the way West Africa. Well, I have with how do we engage or re-engage governments at all level of internet governance issues and multi-stakeholders. Okay, every chapter, every internet chapter operates in different environment. There are some environments that are quite different from other chapters, where other chapters operate. Like I tend to agree with my brother from Kenya, who said that there are also issues that should be addressed within that environment, within the internet governance system. For example, some countries, like my country, access should be one of the issues. We look at access, that there are people in Liberia that do not have internet in other parts, in other African countries also, or in other remote areas, there are people who do not have access to the internet yet. We also look at content producers, just not to be only the consumer of the internet, but they should also know how to produce or produce content for consumption of other public. we also should look at the safety of the internet, where in our region, we see this as very important, that the internet be a safe place where people will have confidence in the internet. I've had interaction with some friends who said, look, I do not want any email because the internet is now a safe place. I'm afraid. So these are issues we should also look at in addressing. Now, when it comes to how do we address this issue with engaging governments, one of our examples I was sharing with somebody yesterday is we open the chapter to everyone to become members, whether in government, in the private sector, or in civil society. They all become members. And within that, if in our ISOC structure, we also have board of trustees, and we ask our members to nominate people from both governments, private sector, whatsoever institutions. So when these stakeholders are within this group, we are able to engage government. They see us as a very important structure that we can be able to address issues related to internet access, safety, and other aspects within our internet governance structure. The ISOC Liberia presently has on its board now people from the regulatory authorities. They also have people from the civil society. In fact, the Internet Governance Forum, West Africa Internet Governance Forum, was run by an academician. Now he is now Secretary General of ISOC Liberia. So this is a way we have used to engage government and other stakeholders within the Internet governance structure.
Thank you very much. Regarding Mohammed's comments, we are already working on some preparatory documents, and we already have some preparatory documents and info for the incoming. I mean, you used Wikit as an example, and we have the WTDC and the Plenipod coming next year. And so if you would like to be proactive, we are, I mean, really happy to help you doing so. Let's go offline, but really happy to help you in that with background information. Rudy, you were requesting the floor after that.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. I'm also representing the ISOC Belgian chapter. I'm not only a trustee. And I think that from a European perspective, at least, PRISM and NSA has triggered a lot of governments and took their attention to aspects they have never been looking at because it didn't touch them as long as they were not affected. And I think that the awareness among governments in Europe is huge now. We see almost every government being shaken because they are convinced that they are not well protected and they are looking around to find help. And I think chapters have a duty to try to help in how can they understand what's going on. For instance, the Belgian telco was hacked by the NSA. But at the end came out it was not the NSA, it was the UK who tackled. So you see sometimes the big picture becomes a smaller picture and it's completely different. So I think that there is a way that chapters, and especially in Europe, we can have a cross-community, a cross-border work that can help to understand, and I can have a chat with my colleague in the UK and say, hey, it seems you have been doing damage to my country. And we can eventually find out what's behind the scenery happening. And another aspect that is quite important in Europe and is affecting a lot and helped even the ISOC Belgian chapter to be all of a sudden in the national picture. It is the data retention and the data privacy regulation that is popping up as for some it's seen as a big damage. It's not a damage, it has to happen. We have to protect ourselves. But all of a sudden, by implementing the data retention law, people start trying to understand, but what's going to happen with my data? If you're going to log it, are you going to be able to monitor? Are you going to read my mails? And that triggered the Belgian television station to ask me for an interview and help people understand what's going to happen. And all of a sudden we were in the national picture just by being on the spot. And I think that as a chapter, you have to take care of what's going on, and when a spot pops up, please try to capture it, because it can be very useful for you as a chapter. And if it's a complex item, we have a specialist over there, Marcus Kummer, who can help us. If we don't understand, if we don't know how to respond, we can call on Marcus and say, Marcus, can you help us giving some guidance in the policy that would be good for the country to help us guiding the country and the government in a good direction. And I think that's something that from the chapters, from the bottom-up perspective, would be very helpful if we could start up having this kind of relationships that will broaden the positioning of ISOC. At least that's my perception. I think I see my European colleagues knocking. In 2 weeks' time, I have never had so many calls to try to understand what Internet Society Belgium was. That was amazing. And it's not me who created the problem and the opportunity. It's just because NSA was attacking us. That's all.
Thank you very much, Rudy. I have our colleague from Canada, and Alejandro Pisanti after that. And we'll close the list if there is no one else that would like. So, you, David, sorry. I thought you were pointing me to Rudy. No. Okay, and after that, David, so we can close the list and wrap up after that and decide on next steps. Thank you. Just keep it short so we have time, please. Thank you. Walter? No, okay, after that.
Thanks, Sebastian. Evan Leibovich, Canada chapter. Mine is more of questions than comments, because I'm new to this and I have more questions than comments. One of them sort of is expanding on what Rudy said. And when we started going through the initial survey of our members, the big thing was education. People don't know what they don't know. And I'm wondering if there's any initiatives either that we can do between chapters or in collaboration with ISOC Central to create any kind of education programs. This is what you need to know. In plain English, these are the threats on the internet. And that goes along with this, which I think is actually a fabulous campaign and is something that we could easily adapt to. So I also have a question in regard to this. What is the relationship between the Internet Strong program and OneNet? Because you have two things that are happening at the same time. But you know, this is OneNet has been this great thing that ICANN is pushing. But this also seems also to be a campaign of information, of being aware, be ready for the challenges that are going to come up and the threats. So one of this is a matter of education, and the second part is once you have an educated membership, then it's easier to mobilize and easier to drive policy. So could you give me a little more information on how this is shaping up, how this campaign is happening, and what is the relationship to OneNet? Thanks.
I'll try. So the campaigns that ISOC's driving are obviously based on our principles, and those are things we will continue to do no matter what happens in a broader environment. The OneNet was initially a suggestion by ICANN that was brought to the iStar CEOs, and I mean, I think it has to be said in full transparency that we were a little skeptical about what it was and what it was necessary. The thought behind it from a couple of quarters, as we've heard in some of the meetings here today, was we need to reach out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people and get them concerned about internet governance. And we need to do that in a global dialogue. There's also been some discussion around having a curated activity, which would actually, almost like an election campaign, move positions forward so we could energize grassroots campaign. And again, there's a little bit of a dichotomy between energizing a grassroots campaign from the top, but you do need some level of leadership or stimulation or motivation. We're not actually certain what we're going to do with it from an iStar perspective, and we're only one small piece of the global community. Civil society actually has both some interest and some questions. It's being positioned as the interface to the Brazil Steering Committee for the Brazil meeting, and that the OneNet, once it has a steering committee, would actually provide the representatives to a couple of the committees for private sector, civil society, technical society, and some of the committees, some of those societies are okay with that, others aren't. Some of them aren't on principle, some of them aren't because they don't think the timing will actually work. There's a lot spiraling around here, and I think what we're trying to do is say first, what would be useful for a global dialogue? I could argue that with everything that we do through the RIRs or ISOC or the IETF or the RIRs talk to ISPs, they talk to major companies, they talk to individuals, they talk to governments. If we actually blew that out and we did the same thing through our chapters and our org members and structures and things, we actually do reach a lot of people who really do care. So I think there's some discussions going on, and civil society's having one. We're trying to find the right venue to have that ISOC-wide. My concern would be that we don't set something up that competes with the IGF. The IGF is a great platform for us. It came through Tunis. Government, civil society, private sector, technical community, academics alike all know what we mean when we say Tunis agenda, when we say the current agreements are operating well, avoid duplicative arrangements. There's a whole host of, we have a working definition for internet governance. That stands us really well, and I wouldn't like to lose that as a platform or a framework for discussion. And there's some concern that OneNet would actually compete. One of the things I'm starting to talk to a couple of people about is why wouldn't we have the IGF, which needs to be better supported. Its secretariat needs to be better supported. I think we can do more to get more out of the IGF, and I think we can do more to put things into the IGF, which would actually help advance a lot of the discussions. And I think there's some pretty clear paths to do that. If we did that, I'm actually going to suggest is, would we ask the IGF to drive the OneNet dialogue, and what happens in the OneNet feeds the global IGF discussion. And even that almost feels like trying to purpose something that exists as opposed to what do we need and let's go create it. So there is some element of some things being out ahead of or in front of kind of a clearly understood need. So we and all of our discussions are going back and forth trying to understand what a need might be and what a purpose might be, and is that fit, and or is it duplicative or conflicting with something else? I'm sure that wasn't particularly clear, but I was trying to represent a number of different viewpoints here in the discussion, and the answer is not clear, but we're concerned that we don't do something that is just duplicative and or takes away from established institutions that have value, that certainly need to evolve. Everything we all do every day in the internet space is evolving. And I think you should, within Internet Society, we need to find a way to have that discussion and get an Internet Society view of what OneNet might do. So if anybody has ideas or you see something that a global dialogue, lightly curated or heavily curated, would help, then we'd really like to hear from you and have that discussion. And I know that discussion is occurring in the other sectors, if you will, as well.
Thank you very much. We have 3 people on the list and 6 minutes. So, and we also need to wrap up. So I would ask you guys to be as brief as you can, please. Alejandro.
Thank you, Sebastian. I think that we can now go very quickly to practical suggestions. One of them, of course, is that we in the chapters are in a privileged position sometimes to interact with our governments and other sectors in our societies, and we should be co-creating together with ISOC HQ and staff contents that we can share. Try to make them simple in most cases so they are easily translated if they are judged to be effective, and to have a very discrete, lightweight system of reporting how things are going without actually revealing conspiracies. On the other hand, we should assume that we have nothing to hide and we can mostly communicate in the open. We must remember that the chapter's delegates list, for example, is recorded and accessible, so we can actually even quote from there by pointing to URLs to specific messages. So assume that we are working in the open all the time. But that also comes with a no surprises policy both ways. I understand that the Montevideo statement, for example, there was no time frame and it was the right thing to do, but as soon as you can at least tell people, there's something coming, keep your eyes on your inbox. that would be very useful. So we would know that it's not a broadside against us, and generate more trust and more incentives to participate from the chapters. Going down into something even more specific, there's a statement, a signed letter by the Association of Progressive Communications, the APC, directed to the Brazil meeting that has been circulating this afternoon. I would just like to point that thing as a very, very good example of something that's very bad. That's completely wrong, and that we should be incentivized to go one step ahead before they come up, because we appear again as reactive, and I don't think we could have stopped it, but it's wrong because it says that the two things that is, first it goes into a lot of procedural and multi-participation. Then it says the first issue that the meeting in Brazil must do is internationalization of IANA and ICANN. And the second thing you forget, because that cannot be the first thing if the objective of the meeting is establish 5 DILMA statements of principle of how the internet must operate in favor of privacy. And we should also be calling some governments who are going very loud out there, without being rebellious, as ISOC hasn't been. If you really care about privacy in those espionage and surveillance scandals, start with an executive order to your police and your internal intelligence services to abide by the law when spying on internal communications. That's the kind of attitude that should be a good framework for us.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. I have David now, with apologies again.
I'll keep it very, very short. Again, I'm an American, so all countries are guilty. You know, we aim at the NSA, but if you actually look at things like the Code Breakers and the Puzzle Palace and several books, all countries are in this game. France, Germany, they're all guilty and have been for centuries. I point out that, you know, we all talk to each other, but there's a huge number of people out there who have different opinions, and to talk about governance and all those, it just does not compute. It's hard enough to get them activated by, in the US by NSA, because backers, well, they protect us. Thank you. The other is I have 2 more points and I'll shut up. The commercial sector is just as bad, if not worse. I mean, they're gathering considerably more information about us that could be damaging. They share it voluntarily or not voluntarily with intelligence communities worldwide. And a lot of the noise that you get, I think that you get from countries deals with the economics of the situation they have. They don't like the American economic forces, forgetting about the rest of it. And if they can split Google into several parts, they can keep the money. You know, it's a perfectly reasonable approach to life, but we have to realize that in fact it's not a simple problem. And finally, from experience in the privacy domain, I've been on the EFF board and EPIC board for a long, long time. Too many organizations diffuse the impact. You really have to keep it fairly narrow, so when organization A says something, everybody listens. And you don't have A saying one thing and the other B saying slightly different things. And I think the I-STAR arrangement helps there. Now, ISOC and each one sort of does its duty. If we diffuse that with too many things, and one net and this net and that net, it's going to just diffuse to the point where nobody bothers to listen anymore. And I guess one final comment, which everybody should realize, we have a new Inspector General coming in with ITU. Chances are they're going to be very upset if they see their future go away. So that is something I think we have to pay attention to. It's a political issue, but you know, governance is politics.
Thank you very much. Final intervention from Nicolas.
Very quick, very simple and very direct. I just participated in a leadership LTP, Leadership Training Program within ICANN. That was last week. Very good, very successful, I would say. Why don't we organize something similar, especially regarding the first issue there regarding engaging governments in the region, especially in the South American region. I think a good idea would be to organize something similar. I'm not saying necessarily the same, but something, of the sort for government officials. I'm sure they would love to participate, because most of them are lawyers who know very much about laws and everything else, but not that much of the technical aspects of the. So I think it would be an LTP for government officials or something like that. Thank you.
That can be extremely profitable. In the early days of computers, the ACM and the IEEE, both international organizations, held classes for legislatures and their assistants, and it had a real impact. They just don't understand what's going on. They're lawyers. There's nothing wrong with lawyers. We don't understand law, and they don't understand technology, basically. And a little cross-education really works wonders.
Okay, finally, Olga.
I think there's a missing link with universities. So we are organizing a workshop on Thursday here in the main room. It's about creating capacity in universities. I teach with several colleagues, very expert in networking. They have no idea what happens here in internet governance, in ISOC, in ICANN. So you're welcome to join. Fatima is one of our speakers and some other colleagues. Thank you. Thursday, 11 to 12:30, and here in the main room, Libertador.
Thank you, Olga. Walda? And I promise this is the last one. Yeah. It's been the last one for...
I'm used to being the last one. I'll be very quick. First of all, I don't have to be as long because Alejandro made most of my points about how this is really an opportunity for us to be sharing information. I also see this as an opportunity for us to reapproach our governments and other stakeholders and new stakeholders, because we've got a new basket of issues that are not new issues, but the basket is full. One of the first things I think might be useful as a contribution is, and this is building on what Lazarus said and also what Mohammed said, is hearing from you what are the different models of or starting points for multi-stakeholderism in your country. And where do you see it's going? Multi-stakeholderism is a new concept. It takes many forms. A lot of it is based on what the legacy relationships are, but it's working in different ways and it's getting started. It would be very helpful as we're putting together our positions and sharing our positions to understand what's happening there. The next thing I wanted to note is that all of these really good ideas are being taken down by Ted Mooney, and they will be distributed. And the final point is building on one of the things that Dave Farber said, and that is that in 2009, before I joined the Internet Society, so I'm free to brag about it, there were some scenarios that were done about different directions that the internet could take, walled gardens and so on. They were prescient, perhaps, and they're really interesting reading. There are some short videos, and I believe they're still reachable on our website. They should be, and I would encourage those of you who are jet-lagged to feed your jet lag by going on and looking at them again, because it may be worthwhile seeing what I think it might put in context some of the things that we're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walda. I think Walda's question is going to be addressed on the list, on the chapter delegates. We have no time for starting that discussion now. So I invite you for going to the list and address the multi-stakeholder in your country question coming from Walda. We have a final participation, a remote participation from a person that is in the room, but it's something that is worth reading. Olivier there participated remotely there, and so yeah. But okay, I just point the people just for paying attention to your contribution. I think my main taking is let's team up and be proactive. I think that's the bottom line. So as Walda said, the flip chat, I mean, there are several pages that are already being flipped. This is going to be shared among all people here in the room. So that's our, yeah, and the slides are going to be shared too. If there is no other business, I will call, yeah, with a final request, that is, we're going to take a group picture. And so I invite you on my left, where Glenn is over there, to join up and take a group picture. And with that, I thank you very much for being here today. And let's hope for the next meeting, our next physical meeting, really.
And a big thank you to Sebastian for organizing this evening again. Thank you.
And I'm sure PIR would like to remind us that music night starts in a half hour.